So once again, we are learning for the menucha of Sir named Dangur and Sir Moses Montefiore. We are in the middle of Unit 5. We are starting from page 7. And just a quick recap of the last final point of the Gemara in Moed Katan. Says the Gemara, the kishkush b'shvit mishari v'hakti v'ashvit ishmetena untashta.
What page is that?
Like page 7. Do we have? Are we low on pages? On figure out a way to when. So it says the Gemara in Moed Katan, the kishkush b'shvit mishari v'hakti v'ashvit ishmetena untashta. What's important to us is that as opposed to a previous brighter that says that you are allowed to make kashkesh on Shmita. Satumei pile is filling up the holes, the gaps that would otherwise be detrimental to the tree, keeping them open. Detrimental to the tree, as opposed to doing things that will just keep the doing it in a way that will enhance the tree's growth.
I'm sorry, could you just write it this way? There's the hole.
You're asking where?
What are we talking about? There's a tree in the tree, or well, I'm sorry.
I think so. Yeah, I think that's what. Right
in the ground, or hole in the tree?
In the ground around the tree, and leaving the hole open would be detrimental for the tree.
Because there's no dirt and allowing the nutrients to go.
I think so. Okay. Yeah, I mean, I can have a. Well, if so, right depends on which. Right, there are two of them. One of them they say is detrimental. One of them they say is not. Right. So, here I'm just having a quick look. Make sure I didn't get this. Just in terms of the shot. Yes, so yeah, I mean, since kishkush seems to be right, kishkush seems to be in the ground, right? Right, the kishkush is something that's done in the ground in terms of creating the correct ruts around the tree, right? So apparently there are ruts that would allow the sun to go through and actually hit the roots of the tree. So you have to fill them up, you have to move them around. So Rashi seems to say, and then there are ruts that would enhance the waters, I guess, would enhance the nutrients reaching there or the water staying there, whichever one. The point is that if you don't fill up the gaps, that could be dangerous to the tree, as opposed to if we're talking about that's the satume file, right? Milshon filling, right? Stop. And then there's the Avri Ilan. So the Avri Ilan is also, and the satume file is mutar. The Gemara in Avodah Zarah elaborates on this point. Let's have a look at the Gemara in Avodah Zarah. Amar Yosef bar Abba, Ikla Rabba Barir Mialatrin. Rabba Barir came over to us. Atavaiti matnida beyadei. Brought a Mishnah along. Matliinum zahamin b'shvi'it. This was a very common thing, right? That people would memorize. You had the people who would memorize the Mishnah and Braitot, and they had the people who actually understood them, and they weren't necessarily the same people. So they'd go around memorizing Mishnah and Braitot, bring them over to the Rosh Yeshiva and say, okay, I have a Braitot. So let's hear it. Say, okay, now let's see if it makes any sense, right? And it has to make sense. But the question is how, right? Now that's your job, right? Not mine. I'm only quoting, right? That's so. Rabbi Barimia used to bring Braitot around. He didn't necessarily understand them. His job was just to make sure that someone memorized them. Someone has to remember them. Matleinim zamin b'shvit, ve'en matleinim zamin b'moed. Yeah, both matlein and mezamin have to do with. Yes. The zihum is to put things on the tree, to put certain substances on the tree that would make the worms and other pests, right? So you're allowed to do during what? Yeah, you're allowed to do that. So you're allowed to use pesticide in that sense during Shvit, but not during Chol HaMoed. Kan v'kan in megazmin. V'sachin shemen lagazum, right? If you cut a branch off, you're allowed to put oil on it. Ben b'moed ben Shvit. V'leit nagar v'lo bar nagar de'fal kinei. And no one knows how to figure out what this Braita is saying, or what's the sense in the Braita. Amar Ravina, ana lo nagarana, v'lo bar nagarana, mufarkin ala. Right, right, a carpenter in the what's it called? Right, it's just the metaphorical, right? The metaphorical carpenter knows how to take things apart and put them back together again, right? So, and he says, I don't understand. I'm not a carpenter or son of a carpenter. Right? I'm not such a chacham, but I have no problem with this bright. I see no problem. Well, what's the problem? So why are we more machmir on? What is the difference? It's not always more machmir. Sometimes you're more machmir on shvit, sometimes on moed. Midami shvit melacha sarach manat tircha shari. Moed afilu tircha nami. So meaning it's not only the person explained. It's not a filu tircha. The fundamental point about moed, when Chazal defined what are you not allowed to do in Chol HaMoed, what you're not allowed to do in Chol HaMoed is work hard, things that take a lot of effort and very time consuming. That's the rule when it comes to moed. Shmita is not necessarily how hard you work, because we all work hard during Shmita. So the issue isn't how hard you work. The issue is how you relate to the karka. Right? So that's number one. But now the more important thing is the next one. Zihum gizum kakashelei, maishna zihum shari, maishna gizum. That's so why are you allowed to use the pesticide, but you're not allowed to cut the branches, to prune? Bidami, later we'll learn what the difference in different kinds of pruning is, right? One's doraita, some are doraita, all the others are drabanan. Why is that? We'll get to that later on. What's important to us is zihum ukme ilna v'shari. It's to keep the tree alive. Gizum avruye ilna. It's to create, right? Right? You create, you're enhancing the tree. Vasu. What about zihum kakashelei? I have another brighter. The ktanim matlinim zamin b'shvit v'raminim zamin tziot v'korchin otan v'kodmin otan v'sinem batin u'mashkin otan Rosh Hashanah, but not after Rosh Hashanah. Meaning you're allowed to do these things in Tosefet Shvit, not during Shmita itself. So are you allowed to use pesticide on Shvit? You're between two brightot. So once again, Dilma kedaravuk v'barachama damar avuk v'barachama trei kishkush hayavu chad lavru ilana v'asur chad astur mefilid v'shari hachal mitrei zamu mehavu chad luk meilan v'shari chad lavru ilana v'asur. So the one that, if the pests are going to be detrimental to the tree, you're allowed to use a pesticide, and if they're not, they're only blocking the tree's growth, then you're not allowed. Same idea. When you read it quickly, because it's the same concept, right? The katani sachin shemen lagazum. Ben b'moed ben shvit, right? To oil the branch, right? You see this around, right? They cut a branch and they put paint or oil, or right. V'ramini sachin et hapagin u'mnakvin u'fatmin otan ad Rosh Hashanah, but not past Rosh Hashanah. Meaning you're not allowed to do this during Shmita. Midam yahacha ukmeilan v'shari hatam patum pera v'asur. So to enhance the fruit, to enhance the growth, all those things are not allowed to be done on Shmita. But you're allowed to do these melachot that are all drabanan, if they're done to save from detriment, okay, to save the tree from harm. And this I already asked last time, but let's revisit that. Why? Why does it matter? When it comes to Shabbat, we don't say you're allowed to do melachot as long as they don't enhance something, right? So why should it be that during Shmita we say, well, if the tree will be harmed, so then you're allowed to do it? Why is that?
Well, it's only one day, it's nothing happens.
Right, very good. So, but still we need to define, and that's why you would make el. But what's the halachic source that, like, what's the halachic basis? What's the rule that allows you to make el based on that? Right, so meaning we'll say more, right? Okay.
You can take it that way. Create new things that you have to let things which are already ready.
Right. Meaning what I think you'll tell me if you were going in this direction. I'll stand somewhere between the two of you, and I think you're both going in this direction. Tell me if I've misunderstood. We see that Hashem didn't answer all the melachot. Why not? Because so we say, okay, what was the goal? Was the goal to make the land grow? Is the word fallow? Right? Is that the right word? I'm impressed with me. Right? The point wasn't that my land that I won't have a garden at the end of the year and that all the trees will die. Right? Otherwise, Hashem would have answered everything. So when I say what melachot are asur during Shmita, I say by definition, the melachot that are asur during Shmita are melachot that create new things, that enhance the land, that do more, that create more. So even when when it comes to planting, obviously planting is the most basic. So also when it comes to pruning, the pruning that's asur is the pruning that enhances the growth. Right? And then we start saying, okay, all the other melachot are all drabanan, and when Hashem told Chazal to find another whole set of melachot that are asur, but not everything is asur. So how do you differentiate between what will be asur and won't be asur? The answer is, well, what's the goal? The goal is not to make everything die and go fallow. The point is, the goal is for us to not create enhancement. Umimele, Chazal say melachot that don't fall into this category aren't asur at all. Let's have a look at Rashi. I think Rashi sounds like that. Rashi later on the page. Hane lav melichet kalka ninhu. It's not a melichet kalka. All this does is maintains the status, maintains the stature of the tree, right? Maintains the health of the tree. So it's not. Why is it not melechet karka? Why didn't you say it is melechet karka, but its goal is different? Why don't you say that? So I think Rashi is saying it's not melechet karka, meaning it's not in the category of what Hashem defined as melechet karka as it applies to Shvit. It isn't melechet, it is bekarka, right? Obviously. But Rashi is saying this is the kind of melechet karka. It's not the melechet karka that Hashem talked about. What Hashem talked about? Creating more. But you're not creating more. You're only maintaining the current health of your garden, and that's allowed. That's one way of reading it. Another option is to say, right, have a look at the right. Let's skip over to the Ritva at the bottom of the page. I think he's similar. Satume Pilei Shari. Velo chashiva avoda. Is it not at the bottom of the page 7? No. Right. Why was lo chashiva avoda? What does that mean? Lo chashiva avoda. It's not considered an avoda. It's not considered an avoda. I think you have to say it means it doesn't fit into the category of the things that Hashem ushered when it comes to Shmita.
That's just one of those refers to Malach.
That's right.
Why don't we just say Malach? I'm just curious. Connection with Shabbat and everything. Why don't we just?
Why does he call it?
Can you repeat what people say in person?
Yes, you're right. So you are. Beseder. So I think Glenn's pointing out Rashi wrote Hani lav melichet kalkaninhu. Opposed to the Ritva writes Lo chashiva avoda. Why does he say Lo chashiva avoda? I think the Ritva did not want to use the word melacha because melacha is a dangerous word. Because melacha, when we say melechet zorah by Shabbos, that includes many, many things that are not planted. Right? So the word melacha could be confusing. That's why he kept away from it and preferred the word avodah. Again, it's not considered avodah. I think he still means the parallel idea that says when I'm working the field, the problem isn't that I'm working, right? Just like we said, what's the difference in Chol HaMoed and Shmita? That Chol HaMoed, the idea is for you not to work too hard. Shmita is what? That you won't work the land too hard. Right? So if I'm only maintaining the current situation, you can't say that I'm working the land very hard. It's not a question of whether I'm doing avodah. The question is, am I making the land do avodah? I think also Rashi could medayek even better. It's not melechet karka. I'm not making the land work. I'm only making the land maintain its current health. So, and therefore, that would be one reading. But Rav Baruch wants to point something out. Go ahead.
I think that what's the concern is you're not allowed to do something that will enhance the production, the growth, etc. But you are and you must protect that which grows so that there will be future years.
Right.
So there's an understanding of the difference between making it productive for now and enabling it to be productive for the future.
I totally agree. Who says exactly that? Remember, I think I brought it here. If I'm not giving you guys on the Zoom a headache. Rambam, yes. Rambam on page 4. And then the Rambam says, the Torah only answered shtei avot v'shtei toradot. Now, why? I think these two go together. In other words, the Torah only answered things that will enhance the karka and allowed us to do everything that allowed us, and also allowed it, maybe even promoted, are doing everything that will ensure right? It won't things that will be detrimental to the land, right? So therefore, out of Rashi and the Ritva, and maybe also the Rambam, you can medayek and say, why is ukmei allowed? Ukmei is lehamid, right? To maintain, right? To maintain. Why is ukmei allowed? Ukmei is allowed because that's not what the Torah is talking about when it says working the land on Shmita. So now, let's see Rabbeinu Gershom or Gola. Where's Rabbeinu Gershom or Gola? Where can you find Rabbeinu Gershom or Gola? So you'll say on page 8. But I'll say usually you can find Rabbeinu Gershom or Gola in certain Masechtot in the Shas, on the side, in the smaller print, right, beside Tosfot. The smaller print that has Rabbeinu Gershom, sometimes Rabbeinu Chanel, sometimes Rabbeinu Gershom, sometimes it's neither. But in Masechet Moed Katan, you find a much more central place. Where is that? What? Correct. It's in the center of the page. It's Rashi. There is no Rashi on Moed Katan. The Rashi that we have is Rabbeinu Gershom or Gola. Yeah. It's very useful because sometimes there are stirot in Rashi. For example, we're going to see a stirah in Rashi now. It's not a stirah, it's just Rabbeinu Gershom. You'll see it at the top of page 8 under what it says by me Rashi, because it's taken from the Rashi part of the page, but it's actually Rabbeinu Gershom. So he says, "Satumei file shemesatem b'kaim shel ilan, shari deit bei mishum pseida, avoilene asur midavi mishum rivcha." So why are these things asur? Because you stand to gain. Why is it mutar? So that you won't lose. So what? So you lose. Sometimes we have to lose for mitzvot. No, you do mitzvot. You work less because you have to go to shul, right? So you earn less because of that, right? Or whatever. You have to spend money on. We have Hanukkah coming up, right? Spend money on making sure you have Hanukkah. You have to spend money on things. Part of keeping Torah, no? Part of being Jewish. Why is this a problem? So you lose some. So here you can say that the issue is something totally different. What's that? Let's remember that all these malachot are drabanan. We have a rule. It's not about all drabanans, but it would be very fair to assume that here too, in a case where there would be great detriment, where you lose actual trees, right, the growth of future years, so we're not gozer all that much. And this might connect to what Philip and Baruch said earlier about what did you say? Sorry, that we don't expect you to let it sit a whole year and grow fallow and everything die, and we don't expect that to happen. right? So in Chazal create their gzerot. So the question is, what is the basis of this heter? Is it because fundamentally that's not what the Torah was talking about when it said melachot on Shmita? Or you say, no, it could fit into that category because you're not allowed to do anything in the field at all during Shmita. Just we, Chazal, allow it because we'll only go that far with our gzerot. We're not going to make people lose all their trees because of Shmita. So the two ways of looking at the heter. The Rambam, it's funny, I jumped to the Rambam all the way back there, but the Rambam you could, the Rambam really can read in two ways. The Rambam, I brought him next. I want to read now in the second way, right? Fine. So what? When you read it like that, it sounds more like, since it's all drabanan anyway, we're not going to go that far and make you lose all that much. The stater. So let's read this in the Mikdash David and then start saying Nafkamino. Tinesh lachkol, betam deuk me'il nashari. Iba shvi'it, asurin rak melachot shemo'ilim befoal. Right, the part of the idea of Shmita is things that are asur, things that enhance the land. That's not part of the ethic of Shmita. It's not part of the idea of Shmita. It's all a matter of meaning since it's drabanan and it's only that far we're going to go. So this goes back to what Philip says. We're not going to make you do this thing for a whole year. On Shabbos, so you lose some, whatever, fine. One day, work it out. But when it comes to Shmita, it's a whole year. You're gonna destroy your land. So we're not going to go that far. So that's the question. Let's see a few nafkaminot. So let's see this Chazon Ish. Or before we see the Chazon Ish on page 8, let's ask. Are you allowed to do, let's say I have an assessment that if I don't add topsoil now, so something bad will happen to my plants, right? I need to add more, I need to take out, I need to weed, right? Weeding would be also during Shmita, but if it'll actually be significantly detrimental to the plant, I'm allowed to weed even during Shmita. So, am I allowed to do that during Shmita? The answer is yes. Okay. Do I have to make sure to do as little of it as possible? If I could do it a month before Shmita, I say I'm busy. I'd rather wait a month or two. I'll tell you more than that. It's very, very hard to find, what do you call it? Forgetting all my English today. It's very, very hard to find gananim, gardeners. Thank you. It's very hard to find gardeners. I don't know why it's slipped my mind. It's very hard to find gardeners. See, I remember fellow, but I don't remember gardener. Hashem Galdin. Yes. It's very hard to find gardeners when? In the 6 months before Shmita. In those 6 months, it's very hard to get what? In the gush, yes. In the gush. When's it very easy to find gardeners? Right after, right? Right after Shmita starts. It's very easy. The person says, well, I can pay more now for a gardener to come and take care of these things. Or I can tell him to come, 3-4 months in and say, well, only do the things that will save the tree, that otherwise there will be detriment. Do I need to bother doing it before Shmita? Right, so going to Rashi and Ritva, Lichora, this is just not part of what's usher during Shmita at all. Right? We say this form of weeding that otherwise would harm the tree is just not part of what the Torah is talking about when it says, right? When the Torah says, even after the Chazal enhanced that and Chazal, right, created a whole other system of melachot, those melachot too have to follow the ethic and the idea that of things that enhance the garden. Everything else is pashut mutar legamri to do during Shmita. That's one way of looking at it. But
possible to look at it that who lot is on? And whether it's, garden,
You're asking, right? For most of you, you're asking is if I employ someone to do during the work during Shmita, whose Isser is it?
Yeah, I mean, whatever, I don't have a garden. I live in an apartment, I keep Shmita, but I'm a gardener and somebody asked me to do something. Am I forbidden to do it? Because I know that he shouldn't be asking me to do it, or if I have a garden, I ask somebody to,
So it's a good question. The pashtut is that you're both over. Whereas the person who does the melacha, right? He's asking about if I hire someone else. The person who does the melacha is over, and also the person who owns it and is causing it to happen. Not only lifnei iver, not only I'm allowing and paying for an isur, so I'm over on the general isur of making people do averos, not just in that sense, but also in the sense that I'm making my garden work.
I think
So I'm working my garden.
Sell in Jerusalem on the roadworks.
So that's what? Yeah, that's an unfortunate issue. It's an unfortunate issue. But I wanna focus. They sell the land and they said they bring a guy to do it and they sell the land and
It's public property, I'm just saying.
public property. Who owns it? Yeah. It's not. No, I'm not happy with it.
I mean, fairness, like you're at, Philip say that from what you said, the garden is more expensive.
Oh, so the question is, when you say pseida, what do we mean, right? The pseida, do we mean the expense, the added expense that I'd have to have before or after? The pseida, it sounds more like what Philip was saying. That's why I keep on referring back to Philip, also because we like Philip. But apart from that, also because the idea is if I won't be able to do the work for a whole year, that'll be significant detriment. It's not just a matter of it'll cost me a few more hundred shekels to do here, to do there. That's generally something that we're Jews, we cope with, right? That's why we want to become doctors and lawyers. At least you're on this table. Half the table. Anyway, so again, based on the idea of these things are not within the ethic of the Isurim of Shmita, so there's no reason not to do them during the Shmita lechatchila. You can choose to do them during Shmita. Why not? So, but if the idea is become the pseida idea, then I say, well, that's obviously only a diavad thing, right? We don't lechatchila say, well, I'll have hefsed, so I'll wait till Shmita and then use the hefsed clause in order to do things that are fundamentally usher during Shmita. You really should do your best to avoid that. That's what the Chazon Ish says over here. Chayavim lezaber lenakesh kodem Rosh Hashanah shelo yitztachu lezaber lenakesh b'shviit. Ve'af im lo yaspik lekol hashana kol ma'id efshar lemu'utei chayav lema'et. Once Shmita comes and you're stuck and it's going to start ruining your field, so you'll do it, fine. It's not only you're allowed, you should. But that's once Shmita comes, you really should do your best to avoid that. So the Chazon Ish in that sense sounds more like the pseida option. I'm saying sounds more like because we're going to see more Chazon Ishes. I don't know. I'm not sure he's totally consistent. But at least he's choshesh to the option that says the issue is pseida. Since the issue is pseida, we need to, what? So the issue is pseida. So we say, okay, so if things will be harmed, you have to take care of them, but don't create that situation.